The pristine laboratory of Vectrax 4 gleamed under the harsh artificial lighting, every surface polished to a sterile shine. Professor Elena Maris stood at her workstation, eyes fixed on the containment chamber before her. Inside, suspended in a plasma solution, floated a small, unassuming sample of tissue, designated H00. It had taken the Deathworld Council 3 standard cycles to approve the acquisition of this first-ever human tissue sample. And Elena still couldn't quite believe it had arrived on her lab table. "Status report," she said, her voice steady despite the excitement building in her chest. Mev Tor, the station's chief engineer, glanced up from his console. His crystalline exoskeleton caught the light as he moved, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the lab walls. Containment field stable. Environmental parameters locked. Observation protocols activated. Perfect. Elena brushed a strand of silver-streaked hair from her face. After 30 years as the Council's leading xenobiologist, this moment represented the pinnacle of her career. Humans had recently burst onto the interstellar scene, their primitive signals rippling across the cosmos barely months ago. The Council, a coalition of species who had evolved on the most hostile planets in the known universe, had immediately labeled Earth a death world upon initial analysis of its environment. But unlike other death world species, humans had emerged with technology and culture intact, raising serious questions about their biological adaptability. Dr. Raul Sin, their biochemistry specialist, hovered near the plasma chamber, his gelatinous form undulating with anticipation. "Remember, this sample comes from a human who voluntarily entered the region they call Everglades, an environment so toxic it contains over 50 different apex predators and countless pathogenic microbes." Elena nodded. "And they consider it a recreational area." A silence fell over the lab as the gravity of that statement sank in. "Initiating primary cellular analysis," Elena announced, tapping a sequence into her console. The sample illuminated under specialized scanning beams, its cellular structure projected in 3 dimensions above the containment field. The first readings appeared on her screen, and Elena's breath caught in her throat. "This can't be right," she whispered, recalibrating the sensors. "Run it again." Mev shifted uneasily. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," Elena said, eyes widening as the same results appeared. "That's what's so incredible. The cellular structure? It's adapting to our scanning beam." "Impossible," Raul countered, extending a tendril toward the data stream. "No biological material responds that quickly to non-invasive scanning." Yet, the evidence was undeniable. The human cells were already producing specialized antibodies in response to the mild radiation of the scanning beam, a process that should have taken days, not seconds. "I need to document this immediately," Elena said, fingers flying across her interface. "We may have just made the most significant xenobiological discovery since the Council's formation." None of them noticed the silent alarm that had been triggered, nor the message that had automatically been sent to the highest echelons of the Deathworld Council. The laboratory doors slid open, and Ambassador Karul entered, his towering insectoid form casting long shadows across the room. 6 compound eyes surveyed the scene with cold calculation. "Professor Maris," he chittered, mandibles clicking with barely contained agitation. "You've begun testing without the full ethics committee present." Elena straightened, refusing to be intimidated. "Ambassador, with all due respect, this is preliminary observation only. The protocols have been amended," Karul interrupted. "As of 14 units ago, the Council has concerns about potential contamination risks from Deathworld materials." "Contamination?" Elena couldn't keep the incredulity from her voice. "Our containment protocols exceed standard requirements by 300%. The sample is secure." Karul stepped closer to the plasma chamber, compound eyes reflecting the suspended human tissue. "Is it?" Our preliminary intelligence suggests humans possess biological capabilities far beyond what their evolutionary timeline should allow. The Council requires caution. Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the lab's temperature. You've had other samples, she realized aloud. This isn't the first. The ambassador's mandibles twitched, the equivalent of a dismissive smile. Your expertise is valued, Professor, but some matters remain classified even at your clearance level. Continue your analysis, but under strict observation. I'll be monitoring your progress personally. As Karul left, Elena exchanged glances with her colleagues. The subtle threat in the ambassador's words was unmistakable. He's afraid, Mev observed quietly. Once the doors had sealed, Elena turned back to the sample, watching as the cells continued their inexplicable adaptation. Yes, she agreed. And that makes me wonder what they've already discovered that we don't know about. She made a decision then, one that would alter the course of interspecies relations forever. We're going to push this further than planned. If the Council is hiding something about human biology, we need to know what we're really dealing with. Ral's gelatinous form rippled with concern. Elena, the ethical implications will be addressed, she assured him. But think about it, Ral. If humans are truly this adaptable, they're not just another Deathworld species. They could be something we've never encountered before. The biochemist reluctantly conceded with a molecular shift that approximated a nod. What's your plan? Elena's gaze was fixed on the gently floating sample. We're going to stress test it. Temperature, radiation, pressure, everything. If these cells can adapt to a simple scan, let's see what else they can do. None of them realized they had just embarked on a path that would soon have the entire Deathworld Council screaming in terror. Over the next 7 days, Elena and her team conducted a series of increasingly complex experiments on sample H00. Each test pushed the boundaries of what biological material should be able to withstand, and each time, the human tissue responded in ways that defied conventional xenobiology. Under extreme heat stress, temperatures that would liquefy the cellular structures of most known species, the human cells formed protective barriers, creating microenvironments that maintained their internal temperature. It's as if they're building air conditioning systems on a cellular level, Mev remarked, astonishment evident in the vibration of his exoskeleton. When subjected to radiation levels 400 times what Earth's natural background would produce, the cells didn't die. Instead, they rapidly replicated, replacing damaged structures faster than the radiation could destroy them. They're not just surviving, Ral observed, his gelatinous form now permanently stationed by the observation console. They're treating our tests like evolutionary pressure and adapting accordingly. By the 5th day, Elena noticed something even more alarming. The cells weren't merely responding to external stimuli. They appeared to be anticipating the next test, preparing defenses before the team had even initiated new protocols. It's as if they remember, she murmured, reviewing the data. Each new generation of cells retains the adaptations of the previous one, but improves upon them. On the 7th day, Ambassador Karul returned, accompanied by 2 security officers whose exoskeletons had been enhanced with military-grade weaponry. Your preliminary findings are concerning, Karul stated without preamble. The Council requests a demonstration of your most significant discoveries. Elena felt a surge of both pride and apprehension. We were planning to conduct our most ambitious test today. Perhaps you'd like to observe? Karul's compound eyes gleamed. That is precisely why I'm here, Professor. The demonstration was set for the primary testing chamber, a reinforced room where the most volatile experiments were conducted. The sample, now having grown to 4 times its original size through natural replication, was transferred to a specialized plasma reconfiguration chamber. This device, Elena explained to the ambassador, allows us to fundamentally alter the environment around the sample at the molecular level, We can simulate conditions found on any known world, or create entirely new ones. Karul chittered softly. And what conditions do you plan to simulate today? Elena met his gaze steadily. All of them. Simultaneously? Even the stoic ambassador couldn't suppress a twitch of surprise. Explain. We're going to subject the sample to a rapidly changing sequence of environmental extremes, from the methane oceans of Titan to the molten surfaces of stars like VY Canis Majoris. The transitions will occur in milliseconds, giving the cells no time to adapt through conventional means. The purpose? Elena's expression was grim. To find their breaking point. Every species has one. Karul considered this, then gave a curt nod. Proceed. The team took their positions. Mev at the environmental controls, Rael monitoring the cellular responses, and Elena overseeing the entire procedure. The plasma chamber hummed as it powered up, bathing the sample in an eerie blue glow. Sequence initiating in 3, 2, 1, Mev announced, activating the program. The chamber flashed as the first environment, the crushing pressures of a gas giant's core, enveloped the sample. Readings flooded the monitors, showing immediate cellular compression. Transitioning to vacuum, Mev called out, and the chamber flashed again. Elena watched, transfixed, as the cells that had just been compressed now expanded. But instead of rupturing, they formed interconnected networks, distributing the stress. Extreme radiation burst, Mev announced. The chamber pulsed with deadly energy, and the monitoring equipment temporarily overloaded. When it came back online, Elena gasped. They're dividing, she said in disbelief. The radiation triggered accelerated mitosis. Karul moved closer to the observation window. Is that normal? Nothing about this is normal, Elena replied. In most species, this level of radiation would shatter DNA beyond repair. The sequence continued, each environment more hostile than the last. Corrosive acid baths, temperatures approaching absolute zero, magnetic fields strong enough to tear molecules apart. And still, the human cells adapted. Final sequence, Mev announced. Plasma reconfiguration matrix. This was the test Elena had been most curious about. The chamber would create an environment where the very rules of molecular interaction were altered, where conventional biology simply shouldn't function. The plasma chamber began to pulse with increasing frequency, the blue glow intensifying to a blinding white. Warning indicators flashed across Mev's console. Energy consumption exceeding predicted levels, he reported, voice tight with concern. The sample is drawing power from the chamber itself. Impossible, Karul hissed. Terminate the experiment. Wait, Elena countered, eyes fixed on the readouts. Something's happening. Within the chamber, the human tissue was glowing, not reflecting the chamber's light, but generating its own. The cellular structure had completely reorganized, forming complex crystalline patterns that pulsed with internal energy. It's creating a new biological framework, Rael said, his gelatinous form rippling with excitement and fear. One that can function within the plasma matrix. The light within the chamber suddenly flared to blinding intensity. Alarms blared throughout the lab as the containment field fluctuated. Shut it down, Karul demanded, backing away from the chamber. Shut it down now! Mev frantically worked the controls, but the system had become unresponsive. It's locked us out! The chamber's reinforced walls began to vibrate as the energy within built to impossible levels. Elena stared in horrified fascination as the human cells, now pulsing with red-hot energy, began to take shape. Thousands of tiny, humanoid forms, each no larger than a dust mote, moving with purpose within the plasma. Evacuation protocol, Karul screeched, already retreating toward the exit. Seal the laboratory! But before anyone could move, the chamber exploded in a burst of crimson light. Elena was thrown backward, slamming into her console. Through dazed eyes, She watched as the microscopic humanoid forms escaped the shattered chamber, swarming into the air of the laboratory like a living red mist. Mev had been knocked to the floor. His exoskeleton cracked from the impact. Rawl's gelatinous form had splattered across 3 different surfaces, slowly pulling himself back together. The tiny red figures moved throughout the lab with purposeful coordination, examining equipment, interfaces, and even the stunned researchers themselves. They seemed to be collecting information. Karul had managed to trigger the emergency containment field, sealing the laboratory before the strange entities could escape further into the facility. "What have you done?" he hissed at Elena. "Do you realize what this means?" Before she could answer, the swarm of microscopic humans suddenly converged in the center of the room, forming a pulsating sphere of crimson light. Within this sphere, complex molecular structures began to form, a message, written in the basic chemical language used by all council species. Elena translated aloud, her voice barely a whisper. "We adapt. We survive. We remember." Then, as suddenly as they had formed, the tiny figures began to dissolve, their energy dissipating into the air. Within moments, all that remained was a floating strand of DNA, impossibly complex and unlike anything in the Council's vast biological database. In the silence that followed, Elena realized that Ambassador Karul was trembling, a sight she had never witnessed from any Council member, let alone one of his stature. "The Council must be informed immediately," he said, his voice lacking its usual authority. "This changes everything." The aftermath of the laboratory incident triggered an unprecedented response from the Deathworld Council. Elena found herself standing before the full assembly, 27 representatives of the most resilient species in known space, all visibly disturbed by the findings presented to them. To summarize, the Council Chair, a massive crystalline entity called Zorex, resonated. The human cellular sample not only survived conditions that would destroy any known biological material, but actively adapted to them, created self-aware microorganisms, communicated a message, and then self-terminated, leaving behind a genetically modified blueprint. "That is correct," Elena confirmed, standing firm despite the weight of so many alien gazes upon her. "And your analysis of this genetic blueprint?" Zorex continued. Elena took a deep breath. "It appears to be a significantly enhanced version of human DNA, one that incorporates all the adaptations the cells developed during our tests. It's as if they were leaving instructions for future generations." A murmur rippled through the assembly. "What are the implications?" asked a representative from the methane-breathing Noor collective. Elena looked down at her notes, then decided honesty was the only appropriate response. "Based on our findings, humans possess a level of biological adaptability that exists nowhere else in our records. They don't merely survive extreme environments, they master them, incorporate their challenges, and emerge stronger." She paused, allowing the weight of her next statement to settle in her mind before giving it voice. "In evolutionary terms, what we witness suggests that humans are not just another Deathworld species. They are the ultimate expression of the Deathworld phenomenon, organisms so innately adaptable that given sufficient time, there may be no environment they cannot conquer." The chamber erupted in alarmed conversations, representatives turning to their colleagues in consternation. Ambassador Karul raised a limb, silencing the assembly. "Professor Maris has touched upon our greatest concern," he chittered. "Initial reconnaissance suggests Earth contains nearly every environmental extreme found across known Deathworlds, from freezing poles to scorching deserts, from oxygen-rich atmospheres to toxic volcanic vents. The humans have not only survived these conditions but have thrived across their entire planet." Karul's compound eyes swept the assembly. "And now they have developed space technology." The implication hung in the air like a toxic cloud. "What do you recommend?" Zorex asked Elena directly. She hesitated, Her scientific integrity demanded complete honesty, but she had grown increasingly uncomfortable with the Council's reaction to her research. There was fear here, fear that could easily translate to preemptive action against a species that had done nothing to threaten them. "I recommend continued study," she said carefully. "Humans have only just begun interstellar communication. We have time to understand them better before making policy decisions." Carul's mandibles clicked in disagreement. "The sample you tested demonstrated intelligence and communication at the cellular level. It actively manipulated our technology and left behind what can only be described as an evolutionary blueprint. These are not the actions of a benign species." "They were defending themselves," Elena countered. "We subjected those cells to extreme duress. Any response was purely survival-oriented. A survival response that nearly breached our most secure containment facilities." Carul reminded the assembly, "Imagine what a coordinated human response might accomplish." Elena saw the direction this was heading and felt a chill of dread. "Ambassador, surely you're not suggesting—" "The Council must consider all options for managing potential threats," Carul interrupted smoothly, "including containment protocols." Containment protocols. Elena knew exactly what that euphemism meant. The Council had contained potentially dangerous species before, through quarantine, technological suppression, or worse. "Humans are an intelligent, sentient species," she argued, abandoning scientific detachment for moral clarity. "They have rights under the Council's own founding principles. Rights that must be balanced against security," Carul countered. "We have a responsibility to protect established galactic civilization." The debate continued for hours, with various representatives weighing in on what the human discovery meant for Council policy. Eventually, Zorex called for a recess, and Elena found herself alone in an antechamber, exhausted and deeply troubled. Mevtor found her there, his cracked exoskeleton now partially repaired. "I overheard Council security forces discussing deployment protocols," he said without preamble, voice lowered to prevent monitoring. "They're preparing a fleet." Elena's heart sank. "Already? Without even making first contact?" "Carul has been working behind the scenes. He's convinced half the Council that humans represent an evolutionary leap that could threaten the established order." "That's absurd," Elena hissed. "They're barely into their solar system." "It's not about their current technology," Mev explained. "It's about their potential. The cellular adaptability you discovered terrifies them. They're talking about biological containment measures now." The implications made Elena feel ill. "Bioweapons? They can't be serious." "Deadly serious. The research division has already been ordered to develop targeted agents that could limit human adaptive capabilities." Elena stood, a cold determination replacing her fatigue. "We have to stop this. Humans deserve the chance to join the galactic community, not be preemptively constrained because they evolved differently." "What can we do?" Mev asked. "We're scientists, not politicians." Elena's mind raced through possibilities. "The data. We need to secure the complete research findings before they can be weaponized." A plan began forming in her mind. "And we need to warn Earth somehow." Mev's crystalline structure vibrated with alarm. "That would violate dozens of Council directives." "And proceeding with biological warfare against an emerging species violates everything I believe in as a scientist," Elena countered. "Are you with me or not?" After a moment's hesitation, Mev nodded, the gesture he had adopted from working with humanoid colleagues. "What's the plan?" While the Council deliberated, Elena and Mev worked frantically in the secondary laboratory where the original data was stored. Dr. Raul Sin joined them, his ethical concerns about human experimentation now overshadowed by the Council's disproportionate response. "If we can extract the complete genetic sequence left by the sample," Elena explained, "we might be able to understand what they were trying to communicate. It wasn't a threat. I'm certain of it." Raal extended a specialized tendril into the sequencing equipment. The pattern is unlike anything in our database. It's as if they rewrote their own genetic code to incorporate adaptive capabilities for thousands of different environments. Not just adaptive capabilities, Mev noted, analyzing a different segment of the code. Look at these sequences here. They relate to neural development, information processing, memory formation. Elena leaned closer to the display. They weren't just adapting physically. They were enhancing cognitive functions to process environmental challenges more efficiently. Survival through intelligence, Raal mused. Rather elegant, actually. A sudden realization struck Elena. That's what makes humans different from other Deathworld species. Most evolve specific adaptations to their environments. Heat resistance, toxin immunity, physical durability. Humans instead evolved enhanced cognitive adaptability. They change their environment rather than changing themselves. Until now, Mev added grimly, what we witnessed in the lab suggests they can do both. The laboratory door slid open, and all three scientists froze as Ambassador Karul entered, flanked by security personnel. Professor Maris, he chittered coldly. The Council has reached a decision. Your presence is required. Elena straightened, trying to appear composed. Of course, Ambassador. We were just compiling our final research notes. Karul's compound eyes focused on the genetic display. Indeed. I trust you've reached no unauthorized conclusions. Science is about exploration, not authorization, Elena replied evenly. The ambassador's mandibles twitched with irritation. The council chamber. 10 units. Do not be late. He turned to leave, then paused. And Professor, the data you've collected is now classified at the highest level. Any unauthorized access or transmission will be considered an act of treason. After he departed, Raal's form rippled anxiously. They're going to bury this research and proceed with their containment strategy. Not if we act first, Elena said, making a decision that would change the course of her life, and potentially the future of human-alien relations. Mev, can you access the communication array? The engineer hesitated. Theoretically, yes. But any transmission to Earth would be detected immediately. Not if we disguise it as routine stellar monitoring data, Elena countered. We just need to embed the most critical information, enough to warn them. Warn them of what, exactly? Raal asked. That they're biologically exceptional? That they're in danger, Elena clarified. The Council is preparing containment protocols before humans have even had a chance to understand they're not alone in the universe. It's unconscionable. Mev's crystalline structure dimmed with concern. What you're suggesting is treason, Elena. Sometimes, loyalty to scientific truth and ethical principles must outweigh loyalty to institutions, she replied firmly. I've served the Council faithfully for 30 years. If they proceed with this course of action, everything we stand for, knowledge, understanding, peaceful cooperation, becomes meaningless. After a tense moment, both of her colleagues nodded their agreement. We have very little time, Elena said, turning back to the console. Let's make it count. When Elena entered the council chamber precisely 10 units later, her face betrayed none of the turmoil she felt. The encrypted data package was already making its way toward Earth, hidden within routine astronomical telemetry. Whether it would be received and understood in time remained to be seen. The Council had reconvened in full, their massive circular chamber now darkened, except for the spotlight illuminating the central speaking platform where Elena stood. The effect was clearly meant to be intimidating. Professor Elena Maris, Zorex resonated, crystalline form, glinting in the dim light. The Council has reviewed your findings regarding human biological capabilities and has reached a consensus on appropriate action. Elena steeled herself. I would like to register my professional opinion before any decision is finalized. Your opinion has been noted in the record, Karul interjected from his elevated position. However, The security implications of your discoveries require immediate action." "What action?" Elena demanded, abandoning protocol in her urgency. "These are sentient beings who have done nothing to threaten us. Their very biology is the threat." Another council member called out. "You yourself documented cellular intelligence and communication capabilities that could potentially overcome any containment we might devise." Zorex raised an appendage for silence. "The Council has authorized the following measures. First, a comprehensive biological monitoring program will be established in Earth's solar system. Second, advanced countermeasures will be developed to neutralize human adaptive capabilities if necessary. Third, all further research into human biology will be conducted under military supervision." Elena felt a cold rage building within her. "You're preparing for war against a species that doesn't even know we exist. We are preparing to defend galactic civilization against an evolutionary anomaly," Karul corrected. "One that your own research suggests could potentially adapt to overcome any species it encounters." "Or peacefully coexist," Elena countered. "You've seen only what human cells do under attack. You have no evidence of hostile intent." "The Council operates on the principle of preventive security," Zorex stated. "When potential threats are identified, containment is always preferable to confrontation." Elena looked around the chamber, seeking any sign of doubt or reconsideration among the assembled representatives. Finding none, she made her final appeal. "Members of the Council, I have dedicated my life to understanding how life adapts to challenge. What we've discovered about humans isn't something to fear, it's something to learn from. Their adaptability doesn't make them a threat. It makes them potential allies who could help us all survive in an unpredictable universe." She took a deep breath before continuing. "If you proceed with this containment strategy, you won't be protecting civilization. You'll be starting an unnecessary conflict with a species that has done nothing to deserve it." A heavy silence fell over the chamber. For a moment, Elena dared to hope her words had made an impact. Then, Ambassador Karul rose from his seat. "Professor Maris, your contributions to xenobiology are unquestioned. However, your emotional attachment to this research has clearly compromised your judgment. The Council has decided, effective immediately, you are relieved of your primary research duties and will serve in an advisory capacity only." Elena felt as if she'd been struck. 30 years of dedicated service, dismissed in a single sentence. "Furthermore," Karul continued, "in light of security concerns, you will remain on Vectrax 4 until the initial deployment of monitoring systems is complete." She was being placed under what amounted to house arrest. "This is wrong," she said, her voice steady despite her rising anger. "History will judge this decision harshly." "History is written by those who survive," Karul replied coldly. "The Council exists to ensure our civilization is among them." As Elena was escorted from the chamber, she maintained her dignity, back straight and head high. But inside, her mind was racing. The transmission to Earth might not be enough. She needed to do more, to find a way to establish direct contact with humans, to warn them of what was coming. The irony wasn't lost on her. For decades, she had studied how life forms adapted to hostile environments. Now, she found herself needing to adapt to a political environment that had suddenly turned hostile to everything she believed in. Back in her quarters, Elena found Mev waiting for her. His crystalline form dimmed to near invisibility to avoid detection. "The transmission was sent," he whispered. "But there's a complication. The Council has ordered an advanced science team to Earth's moon. They're establishing a forward research base for the containment program." Elena's heart sank. "How soon?" "The first ships depart in 3 days. They're taking your research with them. Everything we discovered about sample H00. To weaponize it," Elena concluded grimly. Mev's structure vibrated in the equivalent of a nod. "The genetic sequence left by the sample. They believe it contains the key to neutralizing human adaptive capabilities." Elena sat heavily on her sleeping platform. We need to warn them more directly. How? The Council is monitoring all communications now. Any direct message to Earth would be intercepted immediately. Elena stared at the wall, thinking furiously. Then her eyes widened as an idea took shape. Dangerous. Perhaps even desperate, but potentially effective. The advance team, she said slowly. They'll need xenobiologists familiar with the research. Mev caught on immediately. You want to join the mission? Elena, they'll never approve it. Karul has specifically ordered your confinement here. Not me, she clarified. You and Raul. As my primary research associates, you're the logical choices to accompany the data. And once there, we could attempt direct contact, Mev finished, his crystalline structure brightening with alarm and excitement. It would be considered treason of the highest order. Only if we're caught, Elena pointed out. And only if the Council's fears about humans prove justified. If they're the peaceful, cooperative species I believe them to be, history will vindicate us. Mev was silent for a long moment, weighing decades of loyalty to the Council against the ethical violation they were witnessing. Finally, his structure brightened in determination. I'll speak with Raul. But Elena, what about you? If we leave, you'll be alone here, under surveillance. She smiled grimly. I still have access to the backup research database. While the Council is focused on their containment strategy, I'll be looking for what we missed, the true meaning of that genetic message left by sample H00. I don't believe it was a threat. It was trying to tell us something important. 3 days later, Elena stood in the observation dome, watching as the advanced science vessels departed for Earth. Somewhere aboard, Mev and Raul carried not only the official research data, but also a secret message, one that might give humanity its only warning of the storm gathering beyond their atmosphere. As the ships vanished into hyperspace, Ambassador Karul appeared beside her, his insectoid form casting a long shadow across the observation deck. They carry the future security of our civilization, he remarked, mandibles clicking softly. Elena didn't look at him. They carry a terrible mistake, one I fear we'll all come to regret. Your emotional attachment to this species is puzzling. Professor, Karul said. They are simply another research subject, albeit an unusually adaptive one. That's where you're wrong, Elena replied quietly. What we discovered in that laboratory wasn't just adaptive biology. It was communication, intelligence, perhaps even a form of cooperation. Karul's compound eyes studied her. You believe the cellular response was benevolent? I believe it was responsive, Elena clarified. The sample reacted to what it perceived as an attack. But instead of merely defending itself, it left information behind, information that might be crucial to understanding both humans and ourselves. For the first time, she detected a flicker of uncertainty in the ambassador's posture. Explain. Elena chose her words carefully, knowing this might be her only opportunity to plant a seed of doubt in the Council's aggressive approach. The genetic sequence left behind wasn't random. It incorporated elements from our own scanning technology, as if the sample had studied us while we were studying it. It wasn't just adapting to environmental stresses. It was adapting to us, specifically. That only reinforces the potential threat, Karul insisted, though with less conviction than before. Or it suggests an unprecedented opportunity for mutual understanding. Elena countered, Think about it, Ambassador. A species capable of that level of adaptive communication could bridge biological gaps we've always considered insurmountable. The possibilities for scientific advancement are extraordinary. Karul's mandibles worked silently as he processed this perspective. The Council has made its decision, Professor. The containment protocol will proceed. At least allow me to continue studying the genetic sequence. Elena pressed. If I'm wrong, you lose nothing. If I'm right, You gain potentially crucial insight before any irreversible action is taken. After a long moment, the ambassador inclined his head in reluctant agreement. Your access to the secondary laboratory will be restored, but under supervision. Any findings must be reported directly to me. It wasn't much, but it was something. A chance to find evidence that might halt the Council's dangerous course. Thank you, Ambassador, Elena said sincerely. As Karul turned to leave, he paused. Professor, I have served on the Council for over 100 cycles. In that time, I have seen many species rise and fall. The strong survive by recognizing threats before they materialize. And the wisest survive by recognizing opportunities. Elena replied. History is filled with perceived threats that could have been valuable alliances if fear hadn't prevailed over curiosity. Karul's compound eyes fixed on her for a long moment. For all our sakes, I hope your optimism is justified. With that, he departed, leaving Elena alone with the stars. She turned back to the view screen where Earth's solar system was now displayed. A tiny, unremarkable pinpoint of light amid the vast cosmic ocean. Somewhere there, a species with extraordinary potential remained unaware of the danger approaching from the depths of space. Or perhaps not entirely unaware, if Mev and Raal succeeded in their desperate mission. Adapt, she whispered to the distant light, like you always have. Over the following weeks, Elena immersed herself in studying the genetic sequence left behind by sample H00. Working in the secondary laboratory under the watchful eyes of Council security, she meticulously analyzed every strand, every protein structure, seeking the deeper meaning she believed was hidden within. The work was slow and frequently interrupted by Karul's demands for progress reports. Yet, with each passing day, a pattern began to emerge, one so subtle that the Council's military researchers had overlooked it entirely. It's not a weapon, she murmured to herself one night, staring at the holographic display of interlocking genetic structures. It's a conversation. The sequence contained embedded patterns that resembled the basic communication protocols used by Council species for first contact scenarios. Mathematical sequences, atomic structures, spatial coordinates. But they had been adapted, modified to incorporate human biological elements as a form of bridge between the two communication systems. And there was something else, something that made Elena's breath catch when she finally recognized it. Embedded within the complex genetic code was a structural representation of DNA itself, but not as it currently existed. This was DNA reimagined, enhanced, optimized, with capabilities far beyond what humans currently possessed. It wasn't a threat, it was a gift. The realization struck Elena with such force that she sank into her chair, mind racing with implications. The human cells hadn't been attacking the laboratory. They had been offering an evolutionary blueprint, a means of accelerated adaptation that could potentially benefit both species. She needed to get this information to Earth immediately. But how? All communications were monitored, and the advanced team had already established their base on Earth's moon. Whatever containment measures the Council had planned were likely already in development. A soft chime from her console interrupted her thoughts. An incoming message, classified and encrypted for her eyes only. When she opened it, her heart leapt. It was from Mev. The message was brief and carefully coded to appear as routine research correspondence, but Elena immediately understood its true meaning. Lunar studies progressing. Indigenous bacterial samples show unexpected communication patterns. Request permission to establish direct observation post for closer study. They had made it to Earth's moon and were planning to make direct contact with humans. But they needed more time, and a distraction to keep the Council's attention elsewhere. Elena composed her reply with equal care. Permission granted for bacterial study. Recommend caution regarding primary sequence anomalies. Main research team focusing on protein synthesis applications. Critical breakthrough imminent. The last part was technically true, though not in the way the council would interpret it. She had indeed made a breakthrough, one that could potentially change everything. Now, she needed to convince Carul to delay any aggressive containment measures until she could complete her analysis. It would be the most important and dangerous scientific presentation of her career. The following day, Elena requested a private audience with Ambassador Carul. They met in his personal chambers, a sparse room designed to accommodate his insectoid physiology, with few concessions to other species' comfort. "I trust this interruption is warranted. Professor," Carul chittered, compound eyes, studying her with cold efficiency. "It is, Ambassador," Elena replied, activating her datapad. "I've discovered something about the genetic sequence left by sample H00 that changes everything we thought we knew about human biology." Carul's mandibles twitched skeptically. "Proceed." Elena displayed the holographic model she had constructed, a three-dimensional representation of the complex genetic structure. "This isn't a random mutation or defense mechanism. It's a deliberately constructed communication." "Communication?" Carul moved closer to the display. "Explain." "The sequence contains embedded patterns that mirror our own first contact protocols, but adapted to interface with human biological systems," Elena explained. "It's as if the sample was attempting to establish a common language, a bridge between our species." Carul's compound eyes narrowed. "That would require intelligence at the cellular level. An impossibility." "That's what I thought too," Elena agreed. "Until I found this." She highlighted a specific section of the genetic model. "This structure doesn't exist in natural human DNA. It's a constructed element, one that would allow for enhanced neural networking, improved information processing, and accelerated adaptation." "A biological weapon," Carul concluded immediately. "No," Elena countered firmly. "A gift. Look at the protein folding patterns here and here. They're designed to interface with other biological systems, not attack them. This isn't an offensive capability. It's a collaborative one." Carul studied the display in silence, his analytical mind working through the implications. "Even if your interpretation is correct, Professor, it only confirms what we already suspected. Humans possess biological capabilities far beyond what their evolutionary timeline should allow. The threat remains." Elena had anticipated this reaction. "Ambassador, consider the strategic implications. If humans are capable of this level of adaptive communication, any attempt at biological containment is likely to fail. They would simply adapt to overcome it, potentially viewing us as hostile in the process." She leaned forward, emphasizing her point. "But if we approach them openly, sharing knowledge rather than deploying weapons, we could gain an ally with unique biological insights that could benefit all council species." Carul's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of intense thought. "You're suggesting we abandon the containment protocol entirely?" "I'm suggesting we pause it," Elena clarified. "Give me time to complete my analysis of this genetic communication. If I'm wrong, you've lost nothing but time. If I'm right, you avoid potentially starting an interspecies conflict that could have been unnecessary." The ambassador moved away from the display, pacing the chamber in a pattern that Elena recognized as his method of working through complex problems. Finally, he turned back to her. "You have 10 cycles to complete your analysis and present conclusive evidence supporting your theory. After that, the Council will proceed with its original plan." It wasn't as much time as she'd hoped for, but it was something. "Thank you, Ambassador." As she turned to leave, Carul added, "Professor Maris, your dedication to scientific truth is admirable. But remember that the Council's primary directive is the protection of established galactic civilization. If your theory proves incorrect, the consequences could be catastrophic." Elena met his gaze steadily. "And if I'm right, The consequences of proceeding with biological containment could be equally catastrophic, but entirely avoidable. With that, she left, already calculating how to use these 10 cycles to maximum effect. Mev and Raal would need to accelerate their plans for direct contact, and she needed to compile irrefutable evidence of the genetic sequence's communicative intent. The fate of human-alien relations now hinged on her ability to decipher what amounted to the first interspecies conversation, conducted not through words or technology, but through the fundamental language of life itself. For the next 8 cycles, Elena worked relentlessly, sleeping only when absolute exhaustion demanded it. The genetic sequence was far more complex than she had initially realized, a multidimensional communication that operated simultaneously on several biological levels. By the 3rd cycle, she had confirmed her initial hypothesis. The sequence contained adaptations that would allow human cells to interface directly with the biochemistry of council species, creating a form of biological translation. By the 5th cycle, she had identified what appeared to be a star map embedded within the protein structures, one that depicted Earth's solar system in relation to key council worlds. And by the 7th cycle, she had discovered something that both thrilled and terrified her: instructions for modifying the council's plasma reconfiguration technology to serve as a biological communication device, one that could potentially allow direct consciousness-to-consciousness interaction across species barriers. The implications were staggering. This wasn't merely adaptive biology. It was an entirely new paradigm for interspecies communication, one that transcended the limitations of conventional language or technology. On the 8th cycle, as Elena was preparing her final analysis, her console chimed with an urgent message from Mev. Bacterial communication successful. Indigenous response positive but confused. Request immediate transmission of primary sequence analysis for verification. They had made contact with humans. Now, they needed the evidence Elena had uncovered to convince them of the Council's potential threat, and the opportunity for peaceful cooperation that still existed. Elena was composing her reply when the laboratory doors slid open and Ambassador Carul entered, accompanied by a full security detail. "Professor Maris," he chittered coldly, "you are hereby detained on suspicion of unauthorized communication with non-council entities." Elena's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "Your research associates, Engineer Tor and Dr. Sin, have been apprehended attempting to establish direct contact with humans. They claim to be acting under your instructions." Elena's mind raced. Denial would be pointless. The evidence against her was likely overwhelming. Her only hope now was to leverage what she had discovered. "Ambassador, before you proceed with whatever you're planning, you need to see what I've found," she said, gesturing to her console. "The genetic sequence. It's not what we thought." Carul hesitated, compound eyes shifting between Elena and the security team. Finally, he signaled the guards to wait by the door and approached her workstation. "You have one opportunity to explain yourself, Professor. Make it count." Elena activated the holographic display, showing the complete analysis she had compiled. The sample wasn't attacking our laboratory. It was establishing communication, creating a biological interface that could bridge the gap between our species. Carul studied the display skeptically. "Even if true, that doesn't excuse your treason in warning the humans of Council operations. I warned them because the Council was preparing biological weapons based on a fundamental misunderstanding." Elena replied firmly. "Look at this." She highlighted the star map embedded in the genetic structure. "They know where we are. They've been aware of us for longer than we realized." Carul's mandibles clicked in alarm. "Impossible! Their technology is primitive." "Their technology, yes. But their biology." Elena pulled up the section containing the modified plasma reconfiguration specifications. "This is a blueprint for a device that would allow direct consciousness transfer between species. They weren't threatening us. They were inviting us to talk. Really talk. Not just exchange words, but share experiences directly. For the first time since she had known him, Ambassador Karul seemed genuinely shaken. If what you're showing me is accurate, it means we've been approaching this all wrong, Elena finished. Humans aren't a threat to be contained. They're potentially the most valuable allies we could hope for. Their adaptive capabilities could help solve challenges that have plagued Council species for millennia. Karul was silent for a long moment, compound eyes fixed on the genetic display. The Council has already authorized the deployment of biological containment measures. The first phase is scheduled to begin in 2 cycles. Elena felt a surge of desperation. Then stop it! You have the authority to delay implementation pending new evidence. Evidence provided by a researcher who has already committed treason, Karul pointed out, though his tone lacked its usual certainty. Judge the evidence on its own merits, Elena urged. Have your own experts verify my findings if you don't trust me. But don't proceed with an action that could start an interspecies war based on a misunderstanding. The ambassador's mandibles worked silently as he considered her words. Finally, he stepped back from the console. You will remain under detention while your findings are independently verified, he decided. If they prove accurate, the deployment may be reconsidered. If not, he left the consequence unspoken. As the security team escorted her from the laboratory, Elena felt a complex mixture of hope and dread. She had done everything possible to prevent a catastrophic first contact between humanity and the Council. Whether it would be enough remained to be seen. What she didn't know, couldn't know, was that events on Earth's moon had already taken an unexpected turn. In the lunar research facility established by the Council's advance team, Mev Tor and Ral Sin had indeed made contact with a human exploration team. But rather than the fear or aggression the Council had anticipated, the humans had responded with cautious curiosity and then astonishing insight. Within hours of initial contact, the human scientists had independently recognized the communicative intent of the genetic sequence Elena had been studying. More remarkably, they had already begun developing their own version of the biological interface it described. By the time Karul's experts confirmed Elena's findings, vindicating her interpretation, but not excusing her treason in the Council's eyes, the humans had already constructed a prototype of the consciousness transfer device specified in the genetic blueprint. And they were requesting direct communication with the Deathworld Council. Elena was still in detention when Ambassador Karul appeared at her cell, his normally imposing presence now somehow diminished. You were right, he stated without preamble. Elena looked up, hardly daring to hope. About the genetic communication? About everything. Karul's compound eyes refused to meet hers. The humans not only understood the genetic message, they've responded to it. They've constructed a device based on the specifications in the sequence. Elena stood, heart racing. And the containment protocol? Suspended, pending direct negotiation. Karul's mandibles clicked with what might have been embarrassment. The Council has requested your presence at the first official contact meeting. My presence? Elena couldn't hide her surprise. I thought I was being charged with treason. Circumstances have changed, Karul replied evasively. Your expertise is required to facilitate communication. As they walked through the corridors of the Council facility, Karul finally explained the full situation. The humans have proposed using the consciousness transfer device as a means of establishing mutual understanding. They claim it will allow us to experience their perspective directly, and them ours. Elena understood immediately. They're offering to share experiences rather than just information. It's brilliant, and exactly what the genetic sequence was suggesting. It's also unprecedented, Karul noted. No Council species has ever attempted direct consciousness sharing with a newly contacted civilization. The risks are substantial, as are the potential benefits, Elena countered. Ambassador, This could revolutionize how we understand interspecies relations. They arrived at the Council's primary communication chamber, where the full assembly had gathered around a central platform. On the massive view screen at the front of the room, a group of humans could be seen in what appeared to be a lunar research facility, some wearing spacesuits, others in laboratory attire. And at the center of both rooms stood identical devices, crystalline structures surrounding a plasma containment field, exactly as described in the genetic blueprint. Zorex, the council chair, acknowledged Elena's arrival with a resonant vibration. Professor Maris, the humans have specifically requested your participation in this first exchange. They claim your research associates have spoken highly of your scientific integrity. Elena glanced at Karul, who avoided her gaze. Clearly, there was much about Mev and Ral's contact with the humans that remained classified, even now. I would be honored to participate, she replied, focusing on the opportunity rather than the lingering questions. You understand the procedure? Zorex asked. Elena studied the device. Based on my analysis of the genetic sequence, the plasma field creates a quantum entanglement between the consciousness of participants, allowing direct experience sharing while maintaining individual identity. Correct, Zorex confirmed. The humans have volunteered their chief scientist to initiate the exchange. The Council has selected Ambassador Karul to represent our interests. Elena couldn't hide her surprise. Ambassador Karul? The insectoid diplomat's mandibles clicked with what might have been resignation. As the most vocal advocate for containment, it was deemed appropriate that I be the first to experience human consciousness directly. Elena recognized the political calculation behind this decision. If Karul's fears were justified, he would be vindicated. If not, he would be compelled to advocate for a revised approach. The exchange will begin momentarily, Zorex announced. Professor Maris, you will monitor the biological aspects of the transfer. If you detect any anomalies, the process will be terminated immediately. Elena took her position at the monitoring console, eyes moving between the readings and the crystalline device where Karul now stood. On the view screen, a human woman with silver-streaked hair had stepped forward to their corresponding device. Ambassador Karul, the woman said, her voice translated by Council technology. I am Dr. Eliza Chen, Chief Xenobiologist for the United Earth Science Directorate. On behalf of humanity, I welcome this opportunity for understanding. Karul's response was formal but tense. On behalf of the Deathworld Council, I acknowledge your welcome and approach this exchange with appropriate caution. Dr. Chen smiled, a gesture that Elena knew conveyed reassurance in humans, but might appear threatening to some council species. Caution is wise when meeting the unknown. That's why we believe direct experience sharing is the most efficient path to mutual trust. With that, both participants stepped fully into their respective plasma fields. Elena watched the readings spike as the quantum entanglement established itself across the vast distance between Earth's moon and Vectrax 4. For several moments, nothing seemed to happen. Karul stood motionless within the plasma field, his insectoid form rigid and unresponsive. On the view screen, Dr. Chen appeared similarly frozen. Then, without warning, Karul began to tremble. His compound eyes widened, mandibles clicking rapidly in what Elena recognized as extreme distress. The monitoring equipment registered massive neural activity, far beyond normal parameters. Should we terminate? Zorex asked urgently. Elena checked the biological readings carefully. His physical state is stable. The neural surge appears to be a response to information processing, not physical distress. Inside the plasma field, Karul had begun to emit a high-pitched keening sound, a vocalization Elena had never heard from his species before. His limbs moved in strange patterns, as if attempting to express concepts his body wasn't designed to convey. On the view screen, Dr. Chen was experiencing her own transformation. Her human features contorted in expressions that seemed to cycle through multiple emotional states simultaneously. Her hands moved in patterns reminiscent of insectoid communication gestures. The entire council chamber had fallen silent, watching in fascination and alarm as the first direct consciousness exchange between human and council member unfolded before them. After precisely 7 minutes, the duration specified in the genetic blueprint, the plasma fields on both sides simultaneously dissipated. Karul collapsed to the floor of the chamber, his exoskeleton shuddering with what appeared to be exhaustion. On the lunar base, Dr. Chen was being supported by her colleagues, visibly drained but conscious. Elena rushed to Karul's side, medical scanner ready. "Ambassador, can you hear me?" For a long moment, Karul remained silent, his compound eyes unfocused. Then, slowly, he raised himself to a seated position. "I hear you, Professor Maris," he replied, his voice carrying a new cadence, almost musical, with inflections that seemed oddly human. "I hear everything now." The council chamber erupted in alarmed chittering and vibrations as members witnessed this apparent transformation in one of their most respected diplomats. Zorex moved forward. "Ambassador, report your experience." Karul's compound eyes swept the chamber, as if seeing it for the first time. "They are not what we thought," he said finally. "Humans. They don't just adapt to their environments. They love them." "Love," Zorex repeated, the concept clearly difficult to translate in the Council's collective understanding. An emotional attachment to experience itself. Karul attempted to explain. "They seek out challenges not merely to survive them, but to enjoy them, to learn from them. The human consciousness embraces struggle as a path to growth." On the view screen, Dr. Chen had recovered enough to speak. "Ambassador Karul's mind is extraordinary," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "The precise analytical capacity, the simultaneous processing of multiple sensory inputs. I've never experienced anything like it." She looked directly at Elena through the screen. "Professor Maris, your research was correct. Our species complement each other in ways we couldn't have imagined. Where you have evolved perfect adaptation to specific conditions, we have evolved to find joy in adaptation itself." Karul had risen fully now. His posture changed in subtle ways that suggested a fundamental shift in perspective. "The containment protocol is hereby rescinded," he announced, with an authority that silenced even Zorex's attempt to interject. "I have experienced human consciousness directly. They are not a threat to be contained. They are an opportunity to be embraced." The council chamber exploded in debate, representatives arguing vehemently about this unprecedented reversal. Karul ignored them all, focusing instead on Elena. "Professor Maris, your insubordination is forgiven in light of your scientific insight," he said, mandibles clicking in what she now recognized as respect rather than irritation. "You understood what the human cells were communicating before any of us were willing to see it." Elena was too stunned to respond immediately. The transformation in Karul went beyond mere change of policy. He seemed fundamentally altered by the consciousness exchange. "What did you experience?" she finally asked. Karul's compound eyes seemed to focus on something distant. "I experienced Earth. Not just its physical properties, but how it feels to be human there. Their world, their Deathworld as we classified it, is not merely survived by them. It is celebrated. Every ecosystem, every extreme environment, represents not just a challenge but a form of beauty." He struggled to find words for concepts that had no direct translation in council language. "They seek out their world's most dangerous environments, not just for resources or territory, but for the experience itself. They climb frozen mountains, dive into crushing ocean depths, explore scorching deserts, all while understanding the dangers, even reveling in them. "And in return?" Elena asked. "What did Dr. Chen experience of your consciousness?" "Order," Karul replied simply. "Structure. The certainty that comes from perfect evolutionary adaptation to specific conditions. Our minds complement each other. Where they see endless possibilities, we see optimal solutions." On the view screen, the human team was engaged in excited discussion, their emotions openly displayed in a way that would have seemed chaotic and undisciplined to the council before. Now, Elena could see Karul watching them with something approaching fondness. "The council will need time to process these developments," Zorex announced, attempting to regain control of the situation. "Further exchanges will be scheduled after thorough analysis of this initial contact." "There isn't time for bureaucratic delay," Karul countered, turning to face the council chair. "The containment fleet is already mobilized. They must be recalled immediately." Elena felt a chill. The fleet wasn't suspended. Karul's mandibles clicked in what might have been embarrassment. "The order was delayed in transmission. But now I understand why that may have been fortunate." He turned to the view screen. "Dr. Chen, your species has developed spaceflight capability more rapidly than our intelligence suggested possible. Our preliminary assessment indicated limited exploration beyond your lunar outpost." The human scientist nodded. "We've maintained a deliberate policy of minimal electromagnetic emissions while we assess the intentions of non-Earth intelligences. Your council isn't the only spacefaring group we've detected." This revelation sent another wave of consternation through the council chamber. Humans had been aware of multiple alien civilizations and had chosen to remain quietly observant rather than announcing their presence, a level of strategic thinking that contradicted the council's assessment of their technological development. "Then, you should be informed," Karul continued, "that a fleet of council vessels is currently approaching your solar system, carrying what we believe to be necessary biological containment measures." Instead of the panic or outrage Elena might have expected, Dr. Chen merely nodded thoughtfully. "We detected their approach 3 days ago. Their current trajectory and speed suggest arrival within Earth's orbital sphere in approximately 48 hours. She smiled at the visible shock this statement caused among the council members. "Ambassador, perhaps you should inform your fleet that they will be met by a human delegation prepared for peaceful contact. We've been adapting our communication systems to be compatible with council technology since we first detected your signals." Karul's compound eyes widened. "You've been monitoring us for how long?" "Approximately 30 of your cycles," Dr. Chen replied calmly. "We detected the council's deep space research outposts during our first experimental, faster-than-light communications tests. Rather than announce ourselves immediately, we chose to learn and understand first." The implications of this revelation were staggering. Humans hadn't just recently discovered interstellar communication. They had been quietly observing, learning, and preparing for first contact for decades. Elena suddenly understood the true significance of sample H00. It hadn't been a random tissue sample at all. It had been deliberately engineered to communicate with whatever species studied it, adapting its very cellular structure to establish biological dialogue. "You sent us the sample intentionally," she said, the pieces finally falling into place. "You knew we were studying Earth." Dr. Chen nodded. "We detected your observation satellites several years ago. Rather than confront them directly, we decided to provide a more informative sample of humanity, one that could communicate our nature more effectively than words ever could." Karul's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed this information. The entire council assessment of human technological capability has been based on flawed intelligence. They're not primitives just discovering space travel. They're a mature spacefaring civilization that chose to remain undetected. "Not undetected," Dr. Chen corrected gently. "Just patient. We wanted to understand the galactic community before formally introducing ourselves. Zorex's crystalline form vibrated with alarm. This changes everything. If humans have been observing Council activities for decades, then they've known about the containment protocols from the beginning. Elena finished, looking at Dr. Chen with newfound respect. You could have intervened at any time, but you chose to let us discover our mistake instead. The human scientist's expression was warm, but carried a subtle warning. We believe in allowing other intelligences to reach their own conclusions whenever possible. Forceful intervention rarely leads to lasting understanding. She paused, then added, However, we were prepared to defend ourselves if necessary. The fleet approaching Earth will find not just a delegation, but a demonstration of why humans have survived on what you call a Deathworld. The implicit message was clear. Humans had allowed the Council's activities because they posed no immediate threat, but they were fully capable of responding if that changed. Karul turned to Zorex. The fleet must be recalled immediately, and a new diplomatic initiative established, one based on mutual exchange rather than containment. The Council chair's crystalline structure pulsed with reluctant acceptance. Very well, Ambassador Karul. As you have experienced direct consciousness transfer with the humans, you will lead this initiative. Karul's compound eyes shifted to Elena. With Professor Maris as scientific liaison, her understanding of human biology and her ethical stance have proven more accurate than our entire strategic assessment division. Elena felt a surge of vindication and relief. The catastrophe she had feared might be averted after all. On the view screen, Dr. Chen smiled. Professor Maris, we would be honored to welcome you to Earth as part of the official delegation. Your research associates speak very highly of your scientific integrity, even when it required considerable personal courage. Elena glanced at Karul, who now nodded encouragingly. I would be honored to accept. As the initial contact session concluded and preparations began for recalling the fleet, Elena found herself standing alone with Karul in the now empty council chamber. What was it really like? She asked quietly. Being in a human mind? Karul was silent for a long moment. Chaotic, contradictory, beautiful. His mandibles clicked in what Elena now recognized as thoughtful contemplation. They experience the universe differently than any council species, where we seek perfection through specialization. They embrace imperfection as opportunity. Their adaptability isn't just biological, it's philosophical. He turned to her, compound eyes reflecting the starfield displayed on the chamber's view screen. Dr. Chen experienced the same revelation about us, our order, our certainty, our evolutionary efficiency. These were as alien to her as human emotional adaptability was to me. And that's why the genetic sequence left by sample H00 was so complex. Elena realized. It wasn't just communicating information. It was trying to bridge fundamentally different ways of experiencing reality. Karul's mandibles clicked in agreement. The Council feared humans because we couldn't categorize them within our understanding of evolutionary development. Their adaptability seemed chaotic, unpredictable, potentially threatening. When really, it was just human, Elena concluded. Yes. Karul's posture shifted, becoming more formal again. The fleet will be recalled. A new diplomatic initiative will be established. And you, Professor Maris, will be recognized for your insight and your courage in standing against the Council's mistake. Elena shook her head. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because it was right. That, Karul observed, may be the most human quality of all. As Elena left the chamber to prepare for her journey to Earth, she reflected on how quickly everything had changed. The Deathworld Council had studied human biology, expecting to find a threat, and instead discovered a mirror reflecting their own fears and limitations. They had screamed in terror at what they didn't understand. But now, perhaps, they could learn to listen instead. From the observation dome of Vectrax IV, Elena watched as the diplomatic vessel prepared for departure. Soon, she would see Earth with her own eyes, not as a xenobiologist studying a Deathworld species, but as a representative of the Council seeking to understand potential allies. The universe had suddenly become much larger and much more interesting than the Council had ever imagined. And humanity, with its extraordinary capacity for adaptation, was ready to take its place among the stars, not as a threat to be contained, but as a partner in exploring the unknown. The Deathworld Council had studied human biology and screamed in fear. But fear, as Elena now understood, was just another environment to adapt to, another challenge that humans had evolved to overcome. And in that realization lay the promise of a future neither humans nor the Council could have imagined alone.